We're on the same
When I
side.
woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
Nothing about the past, nothing about the future.
Welcome back to Draftvice, everybody. My name is Walter, and we are a little over a week away from draft night. And guess what, everybody? We're not just gonna have the draft live on draft night in Cleveland. We're gonna have the draft kind of live on draft night, live with Draftvice on the night of the draft, but not in Cleveland, everybody, because that would be too smart of everything. No, we're gonna do live Draftvice draft night in Nanuet, New York, because that's where the heart of the draft should be, is in Nanuet, New York. So yes, please, everybody, we are going to be doing the draft at. We're not going to be doing the draft, right? I'm not going to be Goodell. What we're going to be doing is on draft night, me and a host of other people. Along, I'll be co-hosting with Dr. Chris De Blasio, Dr. D. Chris De Blasio. And I'll also have a panel of great, beautiful local comics, fresh off the market. And if you want to borrow one of their kidneys, I'm sure one of them will sell it to you for a reasonable price. Regardless, though, you should definitely check out the spot in Nanuet, because that may or may not be where we are doing. It's where we're doing it, everybody. I couldn't hide it from you too much longer. And yes, so tonight we're doing one of the last couple of mock drafts. I'll be getting plenty of them in the next week and a half, but one of the last midnight mock drafts of this season, right? Because 'tis the season. I'll be doing another mock draft on Sunday that's not part of the midnight mock draft series, because I'll be joining a friend of mine, Dan Stevens, on his show. I posted an interview he did with me on his show. We talked about, he's a Jets fan, so I'm sure he'll be excited to hear the insights on Zach Wilson and maybe other players they take at pick 23 and later in the draft. And as I'll say, tonight will be a fun one. I'm not joined by anybody tonight, but maybe next week before the draft, I'll be joined by an old friend, a friend you've usually seen in studio with me, about yayish high, maybe a little gingery. Might look like he's related to me, but not the one that's a ginger that's related to me. No, Harry will be on maybe the midnight mock draft next week, because we will be having him in via Zoom. So yes, before we go any further, folks, we will be going further. That's what I'm going to be doing. We're going to go ahead and go right into the mock, right? Back at PFN. Walter, are you sponsored by PFN? Why are you wearing a camouflage Chicago Cubs hat, Walter? Listen, everybody, I can't help with how I dress, other than the fact that I'm an adult and I should learn how to do it myself. But on tonight's midnight mock draft, we are doing the. Before we get into it, right? I'm a fan of Cleveland, right? There's been some news in the last week or so about Cleveland. They signed Mr. Jadeveon Clowney, former number one overall pick of the 2014 draft. They signed him to a 1-year, $8 million deal worth up to $10 million. And then you know what? As quickly as they signed him, 3 days later, they said, Sheldon Richardson, you're making too much money, my friend. So we're going to cut you. We're going to cut you. We're going to cut bait. You're going to go, oh, look, somebody said hello, J-Land. I don't know who J-Land is, but hello, J-Land. Thank you for saying hello. Hello to you as well. But yes, so now the Browns cut Sheldon Richardson. Will they need a D tackle in this draft? Well, we will see. And so let's move along, right? Tonight we will be doing we'll go to the mock to the left. We have number one overall Jaguars. We're not going to spend too much time on this pick because we already know who's going to go number one, right? Trevor Lawrence has basically said he's probably going to Jacksonville. He's donated to Jacksonville causes already, and the Jacksonville people bought him a nice fancy toaster, as far as what I've heard. Yes, he got married recently, and all the crazy, he might be interested into other things than football, doesn't matter. He will be going number one overall, as Urban Meyer has hinted, to the Jacksonville Jaguars. 2 overall. Could it get a little funky? Could the Jets go ahead and sweep the leg, if you will? Will they get out of the Zach Wilson race? I don't think so. I think this is who, if he got to 3, San Francisco would be jumping jacks. But I think right now, 2 overall, Jets go Zach Wilson. They trade away Sam Darnold, so they need a quarterback as bad as possible. Number 3, we've got the San Francisco 49ers. Man, the odds have changed each week that this has gone on. Last week, I said Mac Jones, and the odds switched on me. They went right back to Justin Fields. It's almost like they are following what I say. He's been on the Justin Fields train. Maybe they'll go Trey Lance. They were at his pro day today. And by the way, the QB coach, Beck, been a lot of talk about him. Maybe his familiarity with Justin Fields and Kyle Shanahan. He also was working with Trey Lance recently at the behest of Kyle Shanahan. Ooh, this is some news. So maybe at 3 they go Trey Lance. And he's running a little bit of boot action before. He runs a lot of play action in that offense. So maybe San Francisco goes Trey Lance at 3. There's been a lot of dying down talk about Mac Jones at 3. But you know what's funny is two quarterbacks, or two former NFL quarterbacks, gave interviews recently, right? First, Kurt Warner gave his interview. I think anybody who likes football, who's interested in the draft, should go check out Kurt Warner's interview with PFF, right? And it gave you an insight on how some people analyze the game as far as how they analyze prospects. And Kurt Warner said, listen, to me, Mac Jones would be 3 on my board. And he gave his reasons why. It's the making off-platform throws. It's his natural throwing motion. It's the rhythm and timing elements to it. It's the accuracy. Those things are what he said, listen, this is what I would want in a quarterback. I don't know nothing about no zone read. I wasn't raised on no zone read. I didn't run no zone read. I don't buy the Mac Jones hype to the 49ers. Jayland, it's funny because the Mac Jones hype kind of died, literally, like last week, and it's kind of weird because it was all fun and games about, hey, Mac Jones going to the 49ers, and again, like I said, go check out the Kurt Warner interview because he gave his reasons, and it kind of puts you in the mindset of how some evaluators have biases on how they would want their quarterbacks to be. Sage Rosenfeld gave an interview on Ross Tucker's show as well. He previously said there's no way Mac Jones is going at 3. Right? He sat there and he said, listen, there's no way that Mac Jones is going at 3. Now, he had not really dove into the film. And Sage Rosenfeld's also another guy, like Chris Sims, who's had familiarity with Kyle Shanahan. He was underneath him under Kubiak. And he said, there are things to like about Mac Jones that I could totally see from a Kyle Shanahan perspective. This is somebody who has changed his mind on Mac Jones going at 3. I don't put a lot of investment on guys like Lombardi and Chris Sims. I think they don't get us talked to as much as sometimes they make it sound, but there's sometimes where they do have insight. I don't think anybody knows outside of the 49ers organization who's going at 3. Like I said, I think the Beck connection got made with Justin Fields last week. Now he's the hot end of it. They were all at his pro day. Now there's rumors. I think they knew from when they traded up. They knew that they liked people. They liked the quarterbacks at 3. But my belief here is they knew from the get-go. Now, who could it be? Could it be the guy who's been a part of the quarterback collective? Well, Sage Rosenfeld also works at the QB collective. He's coached Justin Fields at the QB collective, so he would know quite a bit about it. And one of the things that Sage Rosenfeld kind of gave insight on was the throwing motion, being a natural thrower of the ball. Now, that does not mean that Justin Fields does not deserve to go number 2 or number 3. I think this is kind of the insight of it depends on how you want your quarterback to operate, right? So could number 3 be Mac Jones, like it was hinted at in the beginning by Chris Sims and Dan Orlovsky, and now Rosenfeld's maybe even kind of not been completely sold, but somewhat sold on it. I think it might be to me, I'm more sold now it could be Trey Lance or Mac Jones than it was Justin Fields, as I was 2 weeks ago thinking, well, Justin Fields got the QB collective background, and now he's got the QB coach, and now all the odds kind of shifted towards Justin Fields. Me personally, I would love Justin Fields as my quarterback. What do I think Kyle Shanahan wants to do? I think it really comes down to what he evaluates Trey Lance as. I think he might be the best of both worlds here. He has the same amount of starts as Mac Jones. The problem is we have not seen him play since, what was it? We saw him play 1 game this year. Saw him play 17 games. We saw Mac Jones play 17 games, but Mac Jones was definitely more recent. I feel like I've changed so many times on this. I think I'm going to go Trey Lance here. It's scary, right, to say you're going to go Trey Lance at 3, that's what you traded up for. But Shanahan's had some familiarity with some of these quarterbacks. He had the pro day today. He was the one who kind of pushed back to be talking to Trey Lance and suddenly take over as his coach, his QB coach. That's what's kind of changing my perspective on that. That little bit of information that was at the behest of Shanahan might be kind of selling me more on that the more I hear it. The things that I think that people really like in Mac Jones. I think Mac Jones is still as likely to go 3 as any of the other 3. I honestly think the only 2 people in the world that know are John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. That's it. 4 overall. Justin Fields is here. Mac Jones is on the board. So they go Kyle Pitts. Or they trade down. But I think at this point, there's only one team that I could see trading up. I don't think the Denver Broncos trade up. Everybody's been talking about the Broncos. They're tired of they're tired of their QB. They don't like Drew Lock. And George Patton was not a fan of Drew Lock coming in. It does sound like while they've been in on the QB race, I think they are more willing to wait till a guy drops to them than to say trade up and take a guy. The only team that I could see being that aggressive would be the Patriots. The only thing is the Patriots may not. The one thing I've noticed about Belichick is he's never been overly aggressive even to get to the top. This might be the year he changes that. So how many times have I have not? I'm going to do it this time around. We're going to propose a trade, everybody. Going to the mock draft trade. Let's go to the studio. Look, here we are. Everybody, now you can see it. It's over here now, right? But I have to look this way. I should change that later on. Next time I do this. We're going to go at the Patriots. Next, they're going to contact the Atlanta Falcons, right? They're going to be like, Atlanta, I want a QB. You got a QB who I think fits our scheme very well. A man who's thrown quite a few option routes in his system. A man who is very athletic, similar to one Mr. Cam Newton. So at 15, and by the way, Patriots went on a spending spree, right? If they really think Cam Newton's the guy, that spending spree is going to hit them really hard next year because they won't be able to keep Cam Newton long term. Plus, Cam Newton's getting older, right? And the things that Cam Newton does well, he's just wearing down. Like, you can't keep using him as a battering ram at the goal line. So at 15, they're moving up to 4. It's going to cost a lot. It's going to cost them quite a lot. In this mock draft machine, they don't let you trade any further out. I'm going to do 2 seconds and a first. I think it's probably 2 extra firsts in this scenario. But for right now, we'll even throw in 122. Propose. It's been accepted, everybody. The Patriots have traded up. Back to the simulator. I easily could see at this point the New England Patriots potential. Not the New England. I could see Atlanta saying, you know what? There's not enough. You're not giving us enough. We're going to go Kyle Pitts, and we're going to let the quarterbacks drop. Because Kyle Pitts is an amazing talent. And to imagine a team with the Atlanta Falcons having Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts and Julio Jones, these offensive weapons would be sick, right? Like, your defense is going to suck still, and you got to find ways of fixing your defense. But, man, this gives you a lot of room. Could you see the Patriots trading with the Cowboys at 10? Yes and no. I think if it gets to 10, it depends on who's there, right? Who's falling at that point? The only guy I could see maybe falling to 10 is Mac Jones. What would they offer to get up to 10? I don't think they would offer more than a team that is behind them, maybe say like the Chicago Bears if they really like the guy. It depends on who's falling too, right? If it's Justin Fields, I think there's going to be a lot more than just the Patriots calling. I think that's why if he's at 4, or 4 or 6 or 7, the Patriots call. I also think there's now rumors of Miami being interested of potentially trading down. So it's quite possible. I'll switch back to this form. I think it's quite possible that the Patriots would. It depends on who's there at 10. I also don't think the Cowboys would get as much to trade back. It would most likely just be a second rounder. Whereas if you're trying to get up to 4 and there's a real rush for quarterback, I think it's going to be a lot more expensive the higher you go. Clearly, that's how it all works. Whereas if we're getting down to 10, right? Well, the Broncos have already drafted. The Cowboys are there. Like if anything, it would be Mac Jones or Trey Lance or Justin Fields if they hit 10. With the Cowboys to moving back to 15, 5 spots, it would probably be a second rounder. There would have to be a risk of somebody else trading up, which is a possibility. The only options I could see, it would have to be the right quarterback for another team that would really like that quarterback. Either, the rumors of Washington really liking Trey Lance and Trey Lance falling to 10, which is a possibility. if nobody takes Trey Lance in the top 5, if the Patriots don't trade up, and it goes quarterback 1, 2, 3, and the Falcons go Pitts, and the Bengals go whatever weapon they go, or they go Penny Sewell, and nobody wants to trade up with Miami because Miami won't trade up with the Patriots, and nobody's willing to go ahead and fight them on it. You could get to 10, and there would be a fight. The only thing is Washington's not going to trade with the Cowboys, at least we think, to get up to 10. And the Chicago Bears could. I think the Chicago Bears are always desperate, so if the right player fell to 10, I could see the Bears being desperate and going up to 10 way sooner than I would see maybe the Patriots offering up a first. I think it would be more of the Patriots trying to secure their guy, and they would give a second this year because they spent so much in free agency, plus they have all the extra fourth-round picks. So, yeah, that would be the scenario where I could see Dallas maybe going ahead and trading back with the Patriots. We're now at 4. At that point, I think it's Justin Fields off the board to our boys over in New England. 5 overall. We're now talking. Could you see? Oh no, we're still okay. 5 overall. The Bengals, right? The big fight. Penny Sewell, Jamar Chase. I think the last 2 times I have been doing this, or Kyle Pitts. These are 3 amazing talents. I could totally see them going Kyle Pitts. I could totally see them going Jamar Chase, reuniting him with Burrow, and I could totally see them going Penny Sewell. I think if I'm running the Bengals, I saw my quarterback get wrecked last year, right? We've seen receivers in the 2nd round pop. We've seen receivers in the 3rd round pop. Day 2 receivers have you don't need a star receiver. In fact, I think that was a Kyle Shanahan ideology. He's like, you don't need a Julio Jones, but it's great to have one. That was always Kyle Shanahan's point. Now, it's great to have a star receiver. It's not a necessity. It's not a necessity to have a star tackle either, but when you look at what Penny Sewell can do, his movement skills, and also you could put Rashawn Slater in this little grouping as well, whichever tackle that they want, their offensive line is bad, really bad. And what a star offensive lineman can do, look at last year with Tristan Wirfs, right, going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They bulked up their offensive line. And yeah, they have a lot of talent at the receiving core already, but when you look at what Tampa Bay already had, Chris Godwin was a day 2 pick. Mike Evans was a first-round pick several years ago that they spent money on to later. They already extended him. They had Cameron Brate. They drafted O.J. Howard. They have spent assets, but the offensive line got so much better when they had Wirfs, and they had and then Smith took a step forward. So my personal feeling is I would go Penny Sewell here. I've done drafts in the past where Jamar Chase went 5, where Kyle Pitts went 5. I think here I'm moving back to the center of this. I know they signed Riley Reif. There's an old saying, don't let good players prevent you from drafting great players. Riley Reif should not prevent you from drafting Penny Sewell. Neither should Jonah Williams. Jonah Williams could probably benefit from being moved into guard, too, or being moved to right tackle and kicking Riley Reif inside. There's many things you could do with that offensive line, but now you have 2 first-round picks on the offensive line, a guy who you signed that could be a solid right tackle for you in Riley Reif, and then you also have Trey Hopkins, who, honestly, Trey Hopkins is a real question. He's going to come back. So your interior offensive line's a lot of question marks already. Waiting to the 2nd round to go ahead and resolve that issue just sounds like it's a malpractice on part of your quarterback. Take Penny Sewell. Have Jonah Williams kick into guard or move to right tackle, but you now need to bolster that offensive line, and those 3 spots will help you because if you now have better right guard, better right tackle, better left tackle, you can now resolve the other 2 spots. You could draft a center in this draft. Trey Hopkins, I don't know how quickly he's coming back. He was maybe the best offensive lineman they had the last couple of years. Quentin Spain's now going to be a 2nd year there. They'll have other pieces there. Billy Price as well is on that team. He maybe could bounce back, maybe with the new offensive line coach. So I think that they will be able to, but I just think that's so much. All those players together make that offensive line better. And we saw it with Cleveland. We've seen the old years where the Steelers had really good offensive lines. The AFC North, and not just the AFC North, almost every team does better when they have a better offensive line. Do you need all elite talent? No. But you know what? Having one elite talent on your offensive line is great. 6 overall. This is the best that could have happened for Miami, right? Next to a quarterback who they think somebody would trade up for. I don't think anybody's trading up for Mac Jones here. At 6 overall, they look at Kyle Pitts, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Kyle Pitts is on the board. I think they go Kyle Pitts right here. Bam. Big damn tight end out of Florida, right? It doesn't matter that they have issues at speed at wide receiver right now, because maybe with their second first-round pick, they take a wide receiver. Maybe at the top of the second with their first second-round pick. They've got 4 picks in the first 2 rounds this year. That's a lot of picks, and they could utilize them in different ways. 7 overall. We got, and there's only one Kyle Pitts in this draft, and he is going to be a unique weapon. You could play him at wide receiver, tight end. You could play him in part of your band. Either way, I think he's going to be a great player in the NFL, and it just provides a different dynamic. Yes, Dolphins getting a stud. Jayland, I agree with you, man. I love you, Jayland. Yes, Dolphins are getting a stud here, and that is literally correct. You could watch any DB tape, right? J.C. Horn, he had to go up against him. He gave him a hard time. Pitts gave every DB a hard time. He roasted Kelvin Joseph multiple times in that game. And Kelvin Joseph also had a lot of good reps against Pitts too, so it's not like a 1v1 thing. But when you're seeing a guy go up against a bunch of the guys that are going to be in the NFL with that level of talent that he has, I listen, he's gone up against cornerbacks, and you're playing tight end. I think that's a gold weapon to have on your offense. 7 overall. I think there's a real question here with what the Lions would do. Would they go Slater, Jamar Chase? Oh, Jamar Chase is still on the board. Come on. This is where I think absolutely, like, there's 3 or 4. I like Jalen Waddle. I think Jalen Waddle is personally my favorite wide receiver in this class. I don't think he's the NFL's. And there's partially the reason of he had an injury coming out of last year. He had the ankle injury. He came back for 1 game. You know, we kind of gone through the song and dance before. I would love Jalen Waddle on the Detroit Lions because that would just be tons of speed. They got Brashad Perriman for a 1-year deal. They got Tyrell Williams on a 1-year deal. They need to go wide receiver. I could even see them trading back. The only thing is, at this stage, I don't know who the Detroit Lions are trading back with. They are probably my favorite team to trade back with the Patriots if the Patriots don't trade up to 4. And so at 7, I think Jamar Chase, you stay here. You get a guy who can play on the outside but could also kick in the slot, who's going to bully guys, just bulldoze them over. I think that's a perfect guy to have. You know, you could utilize him in the way that Cooper Kupp was utilized when he was, with the LA Rams. They run a very similar play-action style offense under Anthony Lynn. Not totally the same thing, but they do like utilizing a lot more play-action under Anthony Lynn. At 8 overall, Panthers, I mean, this is gold for them. To get Rashawn Slater at 8, I could also, again, another team I think is going to be calling people to trade back, right? With the Carolina Panthers, they trade a second-round pick for Sam Darnold. I think they're going to want to recoup that asset a little bit, especially if Sam Darnold's not the guy going forward. And they just see, like, okay, this is not going to work out. We need to trade up next year or in 2 years. So at 8 overall, I think they're going to go Rashawn Slater or trade down. Or they could go Jalen Waddle. They did lose Curtis Samuel. Like I said before, Jalen Waddle would be my guy at wide receiver. Devontae Smith, I could easily see the argument for Devontae Smith as well. Very good at getting open. The size thing concerns people. I don't think it concerns me as much anymore because he dealt with guys who were pressing him at the line of scrimmage. He just got open. He's quick. He's quick-footed. He's tiny. I think that's what also worries evaluators. But I think he's got the ability to be the outlier. Even still, the Panthers' biggest need right now is offensive line. They have DJ Moore. They have Robbie Anderson. They don't need to be drafting a wide receiver in the top 10. It's either trade back or take Rashawn Slater. And right now, I don't have a trade back option that I like for them because you look at the next 10 picks, I don't see anybody until Washington who's in desperation for a quarterback. I don't even think Washington themselves is desperate for a quarterback. I think they're okay seeing what they have with Fitzpatrick, seeing what they have with Taylor Heineke, and maybe letting the board fall to them. So at 8 overall, Rashawn Slater, I think this is going to be, you're going to probably see that in every mock draft. I think it's the perfect one unless Sewell falls, in which case I think they take Penny Sewell. 9 overall, Denver Broncos. I've mentioned my cousin's a Denver Broncos fan. It's probably the first team I was ever introduced to growing up. Bears might be interested. You're right. Bears might be interested in trading up. That is absolutely the case, Jayland. Thank you. My thing with the Bears trading up is they have to clear that with ownership, right? That's one of those things that you're not just going to override whatever the ownership's plan for you is. I also think Ryan Pace is probably edging towards the end of his deal. And I don't know if the ownership's going to be like, listen, we're going to trust you with trading up, giving away future assets to get us a quarterback. We saw you screw up the Mitch Trubisky pick, right? I think that's going through ownership's head. Whether you think that it was wrong at the time, we are now seeing, hindsight being 2020, that they drafted Trubisky, and not only drafted Trubisky, I think they made bigger mistakes than draft Trubisky. Whatever you thought of your analysis of Trubisky, I think the bigger mistake was the doubling and the tripling down. The older quarterbacks, the not kind of, the Nick Foles deal. That was horrible, and it saddled them with a contract that might be that might permanently, like not permanently, but will at least, again, hurt this team going forward. There's a reason why Nick Foles is still on the team, because they almost can't get rid of him almost. And it's like, you know what? We're better with you than without you. We'll bring in Andy Dalton, and worst case scenario, if he doesn't work, we put you in. But I just don't think that this is going to – it's a team that I feel like we're going to see somebody jump ship later on, unless Matt Nagy, who I think might have bought himself a little bit of like, listen, you know what? I wasn't here when you guys drafted Trubisky. Pace was. If there's some kind of thing like that where they might kick out Pace and keep Nagy, and Nagy's like, listen, man, this is my dude. If Matt Nagy likes Trey Lance, if Matt Nagy likes Justin Fields, and by the way, Justin Fields would be an interesting one for him. Matt Nagy likes those RPOs a little bit more than, say, guys out of the Shanahan tree. He might be able to utilize guys like a Justin Fields a bit more. Even, Mac Jones ran a lot of RPOs, but now granted, the RPOs that he's not doing the running portion of the RPO. He's just making the reads. So I could totally see the Bears being interested. I think with Mac Jones kind of falling, maybe they do trade up. I just don't see ownership clearing Pace for that. Unless Matt Nagy's the one making the call, because, listen, he's made it to the playoffs a couple of times. They've been consistent under Nagy. They've been competitive. But, ever since Vic Fangio left, that defense has taken a step back. I don't know if they feel like, you know what, like we're closer to rebuild territory. This is our one last year kind of deal. I could see it. I just don't see them trading away a lot of future capital. So at 9 overall, I spent a lot of time talking about the Bears, but thank you, J-Land. I'm actually enjoying this conversation with you, Mr. J-Land. 9 overall, the Broncos. I talked about it before. My cousin's a big Broncos fan. They've signed Kyle Fuller in free agency, Ronald Darby in free agency, but the issue is Callahan and Fuller are on the last bit of their deals. I could see them going quite a few options here. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, I think would be a great one here. JOK. Stick him in as like kind of a quasi-safety linebacker. I think they'd be a lot more worried about Micah Parsons. They have George Patton coming in. I don't think he's going to be overly eager with somebody who, has some off-the-field question marks on him. I've been very much pro J.C. Horn to the Denver Broncos at 9, even though they just signed a corner, signed 2 corners in free agency. The issue, and they drafted one last year, I think that's where I kind of die on that issue, though, is that J.C. Horn does not fit what Vic Fangio's scheme does well. So, could be an edge rusher. Azeez Ojulari, Christian Barmore for defensive tackle be an interesting addition to that D-line. You now have a guy to put in next to Chubb. Also next to Shelby Harris to kind of be rushing from the interior, create up pressure from the taking a corner here maybe. So yeah, Surtain, I've mentioned this before as well. I think Surtain would be a good one. I think Surtain's the guy you want to crack open right away, right? That's the guy who you could stick on the outside. I could totally see it. I think they would want to go a different direction because of, again, you spent all that money at corner, and Surtain can really only, you're not going to stick Surtain in the slot. You're going to stick him on one side of the field, and he's going to shut down that one side of the field. You want him mostly in press and cover 3. You don't want him be, especially in the slot, because you also have Callahan there for right now. The reason why I mentioned J.C. Horn is I've seen J.C. Horn play in the slot. I really like that concept. The only issue is, again, I don't think he fits the Denver Broncos scheme. I'm probably leaning right now Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. I think my cousin would murder me because I think he feels like he's a little too light. But he's a guy who could play both strong safety, nickel corner, kind of be a rover role. Now, that's not necessarily been something that's a part of Vic Fangio's defense as of yet. But there haven't been a lot of Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. The closest I could say that's ever been in Vic Fangio's defense is Roquan Smith, who had similar coverage skills coming out. Now, he hasn't really gotten to that level in the NFL. Part of it being he didn't have time to develop in Vic Fangio's scheme. Vic Fangio was gone a year later, so you're now 3 years into a new scheme. You're now 3 years into a new scheme, almost 4 years into a new scheme. I could see at this point, like, they want a good coverage linebacker so they can get rid of Josie Jewell being a linebacker there. I'm going to go Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah at 9. Whether they play him at strong safety, nickel corner, I think either one would be a good option. Number 10, Dallas Cowboys. Now, I know our boy Jayland here clearly is a Dallas Cowboys fan. Yes, Jayland's talking about J.C. Horn's a stud. I want him on my Cowboys to take him. I really like J.C. Horn. He's my favorite corner. He's the most fun one to watch. Dude, again, like I was talking before about Kyle Pitts going up against stud guys, what they did with J.C. Horn, moving him around the formation, putting him on the best guy, that shows you that defense, they relied on him. Now, I think you're going to have bigger issues if you want to use him more in zone, but if you have him in press man, which I think there's certain schemes that are going to value him a lot more than other schemes. I love J.C. Horn. I think Surtain's the better fit for the defense for the Cowboys. Plus, the familiarity with, Patrick Surtain's probably the safer floor guy. I could also, by the way, see Dallas going edge rusher. Just because I could see it doesn't mean it's the right move, but I could see them going Kwity Paye, Azeez Ojulari, to name a couple of guys. I don't see them going Jalen Phillips because it doesn't sound like that sounds like something they would do in the second round if Jalen Phillips was still on the board to go after him. I'm going to go Patrick Surtain the second for the Dallas Cowboys, even though I see our buddy Jayland really likes J.C. Horn, as do I. I just think the way there's also rumors recently or not recently, like a couple weeks ago, that they were really into Kyle Pitts. I don't see Kyle Pitts falling to this point. I just don't, unless there's just like a difference in how the NFL values Kyle Pitts. I just don't see that happening. I'm going Patrick Surtain the second. I've gone J.C. Horn for them before. He is my CB1. I just think because they don't play a lot of man up kind of deal. Like, they're not playing a lot of press man single. They'll be playing a lot more like they will be cover 3, single high. So, and again, I think what Surtain does, just what he could do on the outside, fits a lot better. That doesn't say that J.C. Horn is bad. I think what J.C. Horn would be best at is like the eraser guy. You're going to stick him on man coverage, and we're going to utilize you the best in press man coverage. So I don't know if that's what Dan Quinn does. Honestly, I don't know what Dan Quinn does well anymore on defense because the defense was not good under him with the Falcons. We are hoping that he's learned a little bit in his time of not being the D coordinator and being a head coach, and maybe he's listened to some people. Maybe he's checked out some tape from what Salah's done with the 49ers and said, you know what, I could have 2 safeties be playing, we could play cover 4. So right now, I'm going with Patrick Surtain the second. At 11 overall, I think there's a lot of ways the Giants can go, right? They can go Jalen Waddle. They can go Devonta Smith. Would they go receiver? Horn's resume is impressive. He's been covering NFL caliber receivers throughout. I agree. I love Horn. I totally love Horn. And I think that Horn would absolutely be the right pick for the Cowboys as well. I think this is, I should figure out if I'm projecting more or less in these or if I'm doing them from my perspective. It was my perspective. The only thing is I'm basing it also off of Dan Quinn's defense. And yes, I love Horn, but if you're playing a lot more if you're playing a lot more cover 3 and you're gonna be playing trail technique, you're not utilizing Horn to his advantage and what he does well. He's not really a zone corner. You're not gonna be utilizing him in zone the best. So again, I like both those corners. I think they're the top 2 in the draft. I personally would take Horn if it was my team and I was drafting for a specific team and if it was the Draftvice team, it would be Horn all the way because we'd be playing press man coverage all the time. We'd be going ahead and blitzing all the time. Or maybe we'd be rushing the passer. Either way, Surtain the second at 10. At 11, we got the New York Giants, right? New York Giants have a lot of I think they have 2 major issues right now. One, they don't have an edge rusher, but I don't think that's something they value highly. It's never been a Gettleman thing to draft an edge rusher in the first round. It's been his thing to draft linebackers. It's been his thing to draft defensive linemen, D tackles, a lot of D tackles. He's drafted cornerbacks in the first round. Now, that doesn't mean he can't zig when he's previously zagged. I could totally see him going edge rusher here and going Kwity Paye, going Azeez Ojulari, a guy who can maybe be used in that amiibo. Because, again, Patrick Graham's defense is very fun and very intriguing. I could see them going defense here. The problem with the Giants last year was not defense. It was offense entirely. And could they go receiver here, where they see a guy who's wearing the gold jacket into Canton and Devontae Smith? I could totally see Dave Gettleman loving Devontae Smith. I could also see him totally loving Christian Darrisaw, Tevin Jenkins. The only issue I have with Tevin Jenkins is he's played primarily on the right side. He did have a couple of snaps at left tackle in his career, but mostly he's played on the right side. So I could see them going Tevin Jenkins, liking that big mauler mentality. Like I said, Jalen Waddle, man, if you have an offense with Kenny Golladay, Jalen Waddle, John Ross, Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram, Darius Slayton, you are now very deep at wide receiver. I think they made the Kenny Golladay sign. Like, I don't think John Ross prevents you from signing anyone. I don't think Darius Slayton prevents you from signing anyone. So, or drafting anybody. So at 11, I could totally see them going Devontae Smith. I could also see offensive linemen here, and I'm thinking Darrisaw still on the board, Virginia Tech. I'm going to go Darrisaw here. Maybe me personally, if I needed more of a right tackle, maybe that would, you know what? They kind of do need a right tackle more. And they could kick him. You know what? Yeah, we're going Tevin Jenkins at 11, man. This is nuts. This is not what I was expecting to do. But you know why? They actually need a right tackle. They do. I think Tevin Jenkins. Where are you, Tevin? Come here, Tevin. Where are you? All right. People are going to go nuts for this one. He's going to play guard initially, play right guard, right? I think he'll play right guard initially, and then when Nate Solder's gone, they kick Nate Solder out of the room next year, and they say, we got Tevin Jenkins. He's going to play right tackle. They'll figure out their interior situation eventually as well. But now this is a guy who they can have come in, play guard. I think they would do the same thing if they were going to have Rashawn Slater on the team as well. Say Penny Sewell falls to 8, and then Rashawn Slater falls to 11. I think this would be the maneuver that the Giants would go. Giants bolster up the offensive line. Again, I could totally see Jalen Waddle or Devontae Smith. I especially given how Gettleman kind of evaluates players. He talks about the gold jacket. Is this guy going to Canton kind of talk? I think he would totally love taking Devontae Smith. I think Tevin Jenkins, it just out of the needs that they have, when you look at the issues they had the last year or two, maybe he's not. Maybe he's totally willing to go wide receiver. But right now, going Tevin Jenkins, 11 overall. 12 overall, Philadelphia Eagles. Now, again, this is a team, I think if there's a team that's looking to trade up for Mac Jones, this is where it's palatable to do it, right? Where you could trade picks from this year or maybe like second or third round next year, and the Eagles will listen to you. This is where I see the Chicago Bears jumping in. I can see JC going here. Oh, JC Horn. I totally agree JC Horn could go to the Eagles. They've been playing a lot more man coverage recently. It was weird because it feels like a team that's kind of cycled through things. It's gone. You had a couple years ago where you had where they were playing mostly zone, but that might have been out of necessity. But then James Schwartz still liked the blitz quite a bit. So as they've gotten to try to like adapt to more man corners, they got Darius Slay. They did play a lot more man coverage, and they blitzed quite a bit more. I think now under the new defensive coordinator, you have Sirianni coming in. They're coming from the Colts. I could see them going J.C. Horn here if they want to utilize more man coverage than previous. I could also see them saying, you know what, I also could see them saying, you know what, we don't know where we're going to be at next year. Next year's draft is going to be so much better. We're in rebuild mode right now. This is the team I could see trading back. And this is the team where it's like, listen, if you're the Chicago Bears and you see Mac Jones still on the board, this is where I see them trading up to get Mac Jones. Because the other teams that can maybe be trading up are the Steelers. The Saints could also potentially trade up for Mac Jones, even though, yes, they have Jameis Winston. They have Taysom Hill. They have quite a few teams that could still maybe, the Saints have Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill. But I could totally see them trading up because you're not sold on what Jameis Winston is yet, right? He's still playing for his next contract. For the Eagles, I'm looking at this going, dude, we want trades because we want more picks for next year. This is a rebuild for the Eagles. I think they're going to be looking at potentially taking a quarterback next year. So we're going to go back to I'm going to go to this one now, right? Here we go. Mocks up here. I'm going to have the Bears, right? Because I mentioned before, I don't think the Bears are going to be able to give away too many assets. But if they hear, like, listen, you know what? We're getting calls. We're getting phone calls, everybody. And what if, I know Washington and the Eagles might not trade together. Although I don't think Howie Roseman's totally away from doing that. I could see them trading 20 to move up to 12. I think what the Eagles would really want is a pick next year, right? When you're able to evaluate players better, right? So maybe they go second-round pick next year. You guys can still build up your team around your player. It was declined? Hang on one sec. This was declined? A second-round pick next year. Really? This is... You know what? Okay. Bears are calling the Eagles. Eagles, I think, are getting a little stingy here. All right, we'll give them 83, right? No, I don't want them to give 83. To move up to 12, I'm a second rounder next year, 164. Decline. God damn it. I'm not good at this anymore. I usually get this like on the first try, right? Especially because like I'm trading with myself. It's not even like a complex math thing. 83. Ugh. I think this is where it goes, right? Because I think the Eagles... What the hell? You know what? Fine. Eagles don't want to trade anymore. Eagles, because you guys keep on being annoying, you know what you're doing? You're taking... So, okay, we'll go back. We'll pretend the Eagles don't want to trade, right? Because that's going to be how it goes. Just can't spend all my time trying to make the Eagles trade with the Chicago Bears. So, at 12, Eagles look at their board. Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, J.C. Horn. I think this would be a good spot for J.C. Horn. I could also see Jalen Waddle... He's got that legit crazy speed. The only issue I see with Jalen Waddle, they have Jalen Reagor. There's too many Jalens for one team, right? You can't have Jalen and Jalen. They're going to be confusing me in practice. Like, Jalen, no, not that Jalen, that Jalen. Okay, outside of that, we haven't seen Jalen Waddle really line up a lot on the outside. I think what we're going to have to do here, Eagles are trolling. Yes, the Eagles are trolling. They're like, yo, Chicago, you want to trade up? They're like, nah, man. We want to trade up. We'll give you seconds and thirds. It's like, yeah, we're just fucking with Chicago. We're going to take a guy on the board. Yeah, I totally agree, Jalen. I think they could take J.C. Horn. I kind of like Jalen's thought on that. I think edge rusher's totally on the board for him, too. Again, I think Kwity Paye, they've been a very big team that's loved drafting edge rushers. Derek Barnett. They have Brandon Graham. They have Fletcher Cox. They have interior D lineman that they signed last year, who used to play on the Steelers, and it's gonna hit me like 3 hours from now. But I think Devontae Smith would be an interesting one here because he's a guy who I think can maybe have a better time lining up on the outside. You don't have the injury concerns of Jalen Waddle. You have the ability, I just don't, you know what? I don't think the Eagles would take Devontae Smith. I think they would like Jalen Waddle better because he has that speed element to him. Oh, you guys are so hard. You're so annoying. I hate this team. It's always a hard time. You know what? You couldn't even just, trade. I'm going to listen to our boy Jalen. I'm going to go with J.C. Horn here, right? Get to play that press. Now, the Chargers are cursing at me right now because you know what I was going to do? Damn it, I can't undo it. No, you know what? Chargers now looking at this board. They're going, you know what? Jalen Waddle. There we go. We get a speed freak, right? Keenan Allen's getting old, everybody. We know he's getting old. They got Mike Williams. He's on the last year of his deal. They now get a young wide receiver stud to go along with their other wide receiver studs and their stud quarterback. Now, you might be like, Walter, what about the offensive line? Are you guys paying attention to the Chargers with Telesco there? He doesn't care about drafting O-line in the first round. They've had the bad offensive line for years. They'll wait till the second round to address that, and they'll get a bad offensive lineman, which is why you don't do what the Bengals are thinking of doing. You take good offensive linemen in the first round, and then you wait to the second and third round to get the value at receiver. But that's not what the Chargers do. Chargers going, you know what? We want a badass, speedy wide receiver. And you know what? I don't blame them. Waddle going 13. 14, Minnesota Vikings. This is maybe one of the easiest picks I could tell you, because if Kwity Paye is on the board, they're taking Kwity Paye. That is my bet, right? My bet is the Vikings take an edge rusher. It might not be Kwity Paye. I don't think they take Jalen Phillips because I think the concussions worry them a little bit. But I think Azeez Ojulari could be on the board. He's a little small for what they like in their edge rushers. Kwity Paye, perfect, stout, big dude, 262. He's actually got lateral quickness is amazing. He take on blocks. I think he fights hard. Like I think he is I would say Jalen Phillips is the best pass rusher in this class as far as could play DN and I would feel comfortable with it, except it's been hitting the head quite a bit. Azeez Ojulari, I love, and I think I would say I might prefer Azeez in some team situations. I might prefer Azeez over Kwity Paye in general in a lot of situations. But with Kwity Paye, sometimes watching Kwity Paye, I think Kwity Paye was the first guy I watched this whole draft. And I always come back to this guy has the right frame, the right build. He's relatively new to the position. He played 4 games this year. And in those 4 games, he really showed the development. So at 14 overall, Vikings, they're going edge rusher. Because here's the thing. You all might be like, yo, but what about the offensive line, right? They got rid of their left tackle. Well, you know what? Let's be real here. They have drafted offensive linemen before in the first round. But I think with Spielman and Zimmer are sitting there going, you know what? Defense was horrible last year. We can't have another year where we can't rush the passer. Danielle Hunter can't play. We need another guy there. And not for nothing, having a guy opposite Danielle Hunter helps out. Yes, you could blitz Christian Barr and play him at edge sometimes. But guess what? Christian Barr didn't play that much. Not Christian Barr. Anthony Barr. Getting him mixed up with Christian Barr more, who might go a little bit later in this draft. So, Kwity Paye, 14, Minnesota Vikings. 15 overall. Falcons are finally back on the board. Now, they're sitting here going we wanted to go ahead and draft sooner, but we were getting a lot of calls from the Patriots. They wouldn't stop bothering us. So, 15 overall, the Falcons are looking at this board, and they go, well, we could take a guy who we might have even thought about taking at 4 with Devontae Smith, right? A guy who could pair up with Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones. And everybody would be looking at me going they didn't take an edge rusher here. I'm like, no, because here they could. They could absolutely take an edge rusher here. And I don't think it would be dumb. They could take Christian Barmore, D-tackle, right? There's been a lot of talk about him going top 15, top 20. I think that's a legit argument for that. I think his play style is, again, it was a weird year, defensively speaking. It was a weird year in general. But what Barmore can do, his movement skills at D-tackle, his play strength. The only issue I have is they did not treat him as an every down player, and that kind of worries me with players a lot of time if their own team is not utilizing them as an every down player. Falcons, I think they look at it, they go Azeez Ojulari. The issue I see with Azeez Ojulari is that he's very similar to Vic Beasley and Takk McKinley, guys who they spent top 15, 20 picks previously on. And the other issue with that is neither of those guys worked out. Now, it's also different front office and different head coach, different coaching staff, so they might not have those demons to them. Dude, if what's his name was still here, the other defensive, if J.C. Horn was still on the board, you can mark it up right here. Smith falling to the Falcons here is a steal. That would be a scary offense. I agree. That's why I'm not too bad. I'm not angry if they take Pitts that high. I could see them taking Devontae Smith here. I could see them taking Darisaw because, again, they lost Alex Mack. They kind of need to work on their offensive line. Azeez Ojulari, edge rusher, would be an interesting pick here. Devontae Smith or Jalen Waddle, I think, will fall out of the top 10. One of them or even both of them, because I think you look at last year, right? Wide receiver did not go in the top 10, right? It was Henry Ruggs was the first one. He went to the Raiders. The next one was Jerry Jeudy went to the Broncos, and then CeeDee Lamb went to the Dallas Cowboys. So none of those teams were in the top 10 last year, if I remember correctly. This could very much be a situation where a team gets a falling value at wide receiver. Could I totally see the Falcons doing it? Yes, I could. I think they would still be in a similar situation as they were before. I would so do it. because also they don't have to worry about Devontae Smith playing on the outside because they have Julio and they have Calvin Ridley, who Calvin Ridley's played really well on the outside. So, damn it, me and Jayland are kind of on the same page on this one. I can't, the other, I'll mention this. Greg Newsome would be an interesting pick here, right? Because they have A.J. Terrell. I could see them going back-to-back picks on corners. The only thing is I haven't seen Greg Newsome do a lot of, like, press man coverage. Dean Pease is now the D coordinator down there. He likes to blitz a lot, play a lot of man coverage. I could see them valuing corners very heavily in this draft, including at this pick. If they trade back to 9 with the Denver Broncos, if they find a different trade partner, or if J.C. Horn falls to 15, I could totally see them taking J.C. Horn, that being the top guy on their board. That being said, going Devontae Smith here. I think it's going to be scary offense first, ask questions later. 16 overall. We got the Arizona Cardinals. They would have been going B-nanners if Devontae Smith fell to them, because I think they could definitely use another wide receiver, especially because they none of their guys have really panned out outside of the guy who they traded for last year in DeAndre Hopkins. There's no more Larry Fitzgerald. I think if one of those 3 receivers falls to them, they take them. Since none of those top 3 fell, Greg Newsome's on the board. They have a big need at corner. Yes, Falcons do need a corner. You're right. I think Falcons will value corner in this draft heavily. I do think they look at value of the player and what that guy can do for your offense, and I think they take that guy. I also could totally see them 100% taking J.C. Horn, Greg Newsome. Greg Newsome going to have going at 16 because Arizona absolutely needs corner. Like, they can't do anything more than that. Like, they need corner in this draft. They could trade up. They could be another one of those teams that calls up the Eagles and be like, yo, Eagles, we lost Patrick Peterson. We have nobody who can cover, a cold in our team. We need a corner. We're calling you. We want to get up. They do have Malcolm Butler. They did sign him in free agency. But, again, I think they need to really address the corner room. They went a lot on pass rush in the offseason with, they kept Chandler Jones. They extended Marcus Golden. They signed J.J. Watt. I think that combination of pass rushers is going to be really good for them. 17 overall. Every other mock draft, I've had Tevin Jenkins go 17 overall because that's just how perfect of a fit this is. Unfortunately, Tevin Jenkins went at 11, which it might be a really high. Yeah, you're right. Newsome makes a lot of sense here. You're right, dude. That's the perfect thing. Is Greg Newsome does make a lot of sense at 16. They need a corner. It's the one position they are totally devoid of talent at. They did take Byron Murphy a couple years ago. He finally kind of looks like he fits in as a slot corner. So, again, Butler's there. They now have Butler on the one side, Newsome on the other side. Their defense looks at least somewhat whole, right? 17 overall. I know there's a lot of talk of, did they get rid of their tackle to get a new tackle? Yes, they did this a couple years ago. This is what the Raiders do, is they can't afford a contract anymore. They get rid of those contracts, and they go ahead and draft the guys to replace those contracts. It's literally been the Raiders under John Gruden. So Darisaw is still on the board. Elijah Vera Tucker is still on the board. I could see them going edge rusher, but they spent a lot of money this year on edge rusher, right? They spent money on Yannick Ngakoue. They brought back Hankins. They got rid of Mo Hurst, so I could see them going Barmore here. There was a lot of talk about Barmore going top 15, but they spent a lot of money in general on defensive linemen. So Barmore could definitely be the pick at 17. I don't think I've ever done a mock draft where Barmore went here, so that would be an interesting one to look at. I've seen a lot of talk about them taking Micah Parsons because he could blitz, be a solid edge rusher, has the athleticism to be good in coverage, but we never really got to see him be a huge, we never really got to see him be utilized in that role a ton. I could totally see Micah Parsons being the pick here. If JOK was on the board, I think they lean towards what Gus Bradley says, because I think, honestly, JOK in that defense would be very interesting because you have, Gus Bradley previously had Derwin James and utilized Derwin James perfectly. Like, he was one of those guys who left the Seattle system and adapted. So I could see JOK. I could see Micah Parsons. I could see Barmore. Is there an edge rusher? Elijah Vera Tucker. That is a very good option. Elijah Vera Tucker at 17 would definitely be on the board for them. The issue is Elijah Vera Tucker going to be able to play tackle? He can play tackle. And honestly, I'm of the opinion that if a guy could play tackle, you should try him there and then kick him to guard. I don't know. I think a lot of teams are going to look at him strictly as a guard. That's going to suck a little bit for his pay. and where he gets drafted. But I think he could be like one of those elite level guards. The thing is, I feel like their bigger issue is at tackle, not guard. They do have Incognito, Denzel Good. None of those guys are great at guard, but I'd rather have a little bit of a weakness at guard. Incognito's good at guard, but Elijah Vera Tucker would be very good. I still think they have issues at tackle more than they do at guard. They've played Denzel Good at guard. He can play tackle. I don't feel good at him with tackle. I could see Darisaw here. I could see Samuel Cosme here. I don't think Eichenberg goes this high. So for me, I'm gonna go Darisaw. Right? I would go with Elijah Vera Tucker. I like Vera Tucker better than Darisaw, but overall, like as a player. But I think Darisaw would be fine for them here. Again, if JOK was on the board, I think they would go JOK. I think he fits more of the Derwin James role, if you will. 18 overall, Miami Dolphins are on the board, and what do they do, right? They went, who'd they go with? They went Kyle Pitts. All right, first off, 3 spots away from getting Devontae Smith. Imagine that. Like, you get 2 of the top 10 receiving options in this draft. They could call it because they do have the draft capital to do that, to be able to move up to 15, say, yo, like, Atlanta, do you want some more picks? We'll move up to 15. We'll go. They could even move up to 14 with the Minnesota Vikings and do it and be able to get Devontae Smith and Kyle Pitts. Damn, man, I'm starting to really like that idea. If I was just running the Dolphins this whole time, maybe that's what I would have done. I would have been like, yo, we're coming up. We're getting Devontae Smith. We're going to have an elite receiving core now. And that would have been sick because you would have had Preston Williams on the outside, Devontae Parker on the outside, Devontae Smith at slot, and you also would have had Kyle Pitts at tight end. Yo, you wouldn't be able to cover anybody anymore. 18 overall, that's not how that went down. I could see them going with Zizo Jalari, right? Edge rusher. One of my favorite players in this draft class. I think I basically had a bromance with this guy since I've seen his tape. Every time you turn it on, he's just fun to watch. Like, that matters, that they're fun to watch. Do they have skills is the question. But he certainly does. I don't see them going D-tackle. They have Wilkinson. They've been pretty solid on D-tackle. Could they go Micah Parsons? This is kind of where I would see Micah Parsons possibly going. The only issue with them going Parsons, to me, overall, that would be such a fun team to watch if Smith fell there. Yes, I know, right? If Smith somehow got to the Dolphins, to get Smith and Pitts on the same team would be insanity. And could actually happen the way this draft fell. And so far, it's not like this draft's been totally unrealistic. It's not like a move that's totally out of the realm of possibility. Even saying, like, yes, the Tevin Jenkins went relatively higher, but we've seen offensive linemen get pushed up boards. I could totally see that going that way. And then even the Miami Dolphins jumping up if they saw Devontae Smith falling. Micah Parsons be a good blitz backer for them. I think that would be a very fun defense. Very, again, that's something where it comes down to how you feel about the player. The other guy who I've sometimes mentioned is Jalen Phillips going to the Miami Dolphins because they would have 4 top 2 round picks. I could see them getting Jalen Phillips. I don't know if they would spend 18. I maybe have a plan of how they would spend a pick to maybe get Jalen Phillips later on, and maybe we'll talk about that. So at 18 overall, this draft isn't a reach at all. Crazier things have happened. Yeah, right? Like, this is actually kind of going, like, kind of what you would expect. Thanks, Jayland. It's kind of going how, like, what you would think the draft could go. At 18, I could see them going Micah Parsons. There's been a lot of talk that they wouldn't go offensive lineman this early because they like Hunt, and I could see them going Elijah Vera Tucker, though, because they could value a guard at this spot that, they can keep Hunt on the outside. I think next year they're going to get rid of Flowers. On the left side, you have Austin Jackson. You're hoping he develops year 2. I was not a fan of Austin Jackson. I wasn't a fan of that pick. That's one of the more questionable Miami Dolphin moves last year. But, if you believe in him as your left tackle, I think that's fine. I actually kind of like Hunt better than I liked than Austin Jackson last year. So, 18 overall. I could see them going defense. I could see them going offensive lineman. Cosme, I think they liked Hunt and what he did. I could see either Elijah Vera Tucker because they can kick him in the guard. They can keep him at right guard. 18's not too high for a guard. This is about the highest you would see a guard that's not named Quentin Nelson in most drafts. I think, what was it? Like the Falcons took Lindstrom, I think, around this range one year. But I also think Micah Parsons. Man, if Micah Parsons falls below 18, that's not totally unrealistic either because of the off the field. And I don't know how many teams are going to be overly eager about the off the field, especially with the hazing incidents. They're not going to take Mac Jones. They could actually be a team that would trade back. Again, Chicago Bears. Again, another time where the Chicago Bears might be calling up. But if you're feeling like, oh, the right guy is falling to you, I could see the Steelers. The only thing is the Steelers seem like they're all in this year, so I don't see them trading. So at this point, I think 18, it's finally time to make a pick. I'm thinking it's got to be Micah Parsons or Elijah Vera Tucker. I think Micah Parsons seems a little bit more in the realm of what Flores would like. I think this is what Flores would do. I do think they address offensive line later on in this draft a little bit more. I just think this is where it kind of goes. 19 overall. I'm sure the Washington fans are kicking me right now because no Micah Parsons, no JOK. I don't think they take Mac Jones even here. I don't. I honestly think that this is the funny thing about the Washington football team. I don't think they're as worried about quarterback. I think they want to just build up the team around Ryan Fitzpatrick, see what Taylor Heineke is, and I think maybe second or third round, maybe go for a guy like Kellen Mond or David Stills, the guy out of Stanford. So they might go for one of those guys. Two totally different quarterbacks, by the way. Kellen Mond, a lot more athlete, and actually I was watching a lot of Kellen Mond the last week or so because I just felt like watching some quarterbacks, and Mond is one of those guys that I kind of like, but I don't like him as I wouldn't want him to be my starter for 17 games in a season. I would absolutely love him as a high-end backup. So at 19, I don't think they go Mac Jones. If Mac Jones is on the board, which he currently is, I could see them going Elijah Vera Tucker, except that they kind of feel okay with their offensive line. Rashad Bateman would be a guy that I would like for them because now you have an outside receiver to pair up with Terry McLaurin. Now you're assuming Bateman bounces back. Heard a little bit of rumblings that Bateman might not be even a first-round pick this year. I've heard this multiple times. This is not like I've heard it from I heard it earlier in the offseason that he's not considered a first-round pick by quite a few teams. I heard it recently again by Peter Schrager. And that was both of those things are kind of selling me on. I think teams are going to lower his value a little bit, partially because when he came back from COVID this year, he didn't bounce back all the way. They ran him more out of the slot to kind of give him some, he was good at the run after catch stuff out of the slot, but he wasn't as good as he was in 2019. His 2019 tape is sick. He's just beating guys on the outside as an outside receiver. I think that actually might worry teams and say, listen, what if he doesn't get back to 2019 form? We think he could do that, but we just didn't see it this year. So I could see teams being a little bit worried about that. At 19, I think Joseph Osai, Samuel Cosme, I think they would be interested in offensive linemen. They have Moses. Mac Jones seems the pick here. I don't disagree. That's kind of maybe what I would do if I was the Washington football team more so. Maybe. Because I actually like Mac Jones, and I think him falling past 19 and 20 would be stupid. I think I've done one where Mac Jones went 19. I don't think they would force themselves to take Mac Jones. The thing is I think Mac Jones could actually be very good in that offense. You have Curtis Samuel, who they signed. You have Logan Thomas. You have a solid offensive line. He actually, again, one of the things that Mac Jones does very well is he's got very good pocket presence. He's definitely able to handle, being blitzed. He has good play recognition, and he is able to go through his reads. Although he's not listen. I think the thing about Justin Fields not being able to go through his reads is a kind of a misnomer, a little bit overblown. If anything, Mac Jones had less multi-read plays than Fields did. But what Mac Jones does under pressure, the rare times he's under pressure, he's very good at. the timing. He's very good at, if you get him in rhythm and timing, he's very good. And when you get him out of rhythm, he's very good. And that's the thing that I think teams are going to like about him. I think you're right. You know what, Jalen? I don't think I've done it where Mac Jones went to the Washington football team. I kind of like it here. They don't need anything. They wouldn't be forcing themselves on anything. If the right guy was here for them, Barmore would maybe be the one exception here because, Jonathan Allen might be leaving soon. They have a few D tackles on the roster, but they're getting to the end of their contracts. Can you pay those guys? I'm going to go with Mac Jones here. 20 overall, the Chicago Bears. Again, maybe they would have traded up to 18 or 17 or 15 to get Mac Jones. I think we remember I tried doing that before, and the Eagles were like, you know what? Sorry, Chicago, you're not pulling it off this time around. So maybe, it depends on where we get into the draft. Maybe Chicago trades up to leapfrog the Washington football team. I don't think it's going to be for a lot of assets, but it's going to be for some assets. So I could see that happening. Chicago's on the board here. They could go Elijah Vera-Tucker, offensive guard. Kind of be an interesting maneuver if they were going to play him at tackle. Bears really salty now. Yeah, I think they'd be very mad too, man. I think they maybe would have traded up or even offered a trade to Washington to grab Mac Jones, kind of like what they did when they got Trubisky. Let's remind everybody again what we did when we took Mitch Trubisky. Well, we'll give him a third-round pick and a fourth-round pick so we can get up a spot to get our guy. I could actually see Washington doing that where they sit there and say, you know what, we're going to take him, and if you want us to not take him, give us a third. And that would be an interesting way of handling it. Chicago's on the board, though. They didn't get their guy. Samuel Cosmi is going to the Chicago Bears because they need offensive linemen like crazy. They just got rid of Bobby Massey. I actually happen to have a friend named Bobby Massey who's a comedian. Not that Bobby Massey because he ain't a good right tackle. He's a very good comedian, but he could tell you a good joke. He is not a very good right tackle. And the Bobby Massey from the Bears was not a horrible right tackle. He was kind of the back end of the roster right tackle. Samuel Cosmi, you could play him at left or right tackle. Maybe move Leno over to the right side. Massey and Leno, again, a couple of comedians here, man. 21 overall. Colts are on the board. They would love to go offensive lineman here, right? I think they're pretty much drafting for need at this point. Like everybody knows they need a tackle. If it was me, I would take Liam Eichenberg. The thing is, I know a lot of teams value arm length, so I could see them not going Liam Eichenberg. So, that's the thing. I'm trying to evaluate them both in the guys of the team and how I like a guy. So, how would this team, is it realistic if this team took this guy? I think it's semi-realistic that the Colts would take Eichenberg. Looking at the tackles that are on the board, potentially, let's go to OT. Dylan Radins, this would be really high for Dylan Radins. Alex Leatherwood. Leatherwood had a down year, and it's kind of weird trying to evaluate some of these offensive linemen who've had, even offensive linemen, it's the receiving class too. Half the receivers in this receiving class had better 2019s than they did 2020s. You talk about Rashad Bateman, Rondale Moore, Terrence Marshall, all of them. If you watch their 2020 film, you're kind of like, what are they doing that's special? And then you watch their 2019 film, or with Rondale Moore, his 2018 film, and you go, oh, these guys are legit. So I could totally see teams maybe trying to throw out a little bit of the 2020 because you had the weird off season. Maybe they didn't get enough training camp in. So Leatherwood, I could see going at 21 to the Colts. I think that would be a little high. People are now talking about Brady Christensen potentially being a first-round pick. Dude, I thought I was high on Brady Christensen when I had him as a borderline, at the top of the third, back end of the second kind of guy. Dude, the talk of him going in the first round is kind of really blowing my mind. Now, he could go top 50 for a team that's desperate at tackle. He would be a solid tackle for somebody. I just don't think he's going to be that top-end guy. And between Christensen and Liam Eichenberg, I would take Eichenberg 10 times out of 10. Leatherwood, I think, has more potential to at least be a solid offensive lineman than Christensen does. So that one really blows my mind. I'm not a huge fan of Jalen Mayfield. Stone Forsythe has been talked about in the first round a lot. And he could absolutely go in the first round here. I I'm so torn because I kind of just want to put Eichenberg here and just be done with it. Or Elijah Vera Tucker at this point. If I'm a big Elijah Vera, I think him playing tackle last year, I think, you know what? Do it. I know why I spent all this time where I'm just going to go Elijah Vera Tucker. But you know what? I think the Colts aren't afraid of playing him at left tackle. They're willing to do it, folks. That's right. The Colts finally took Elijah Vera Tucker off the board. They're going to try and play him at tackle, and if he doesn't work at tackle, they'll play him at guard. And they're doing it live, like Draftvice live. Anyway, 22 overall, the Tennessee Titans. I mean, there's a team that needs their right tackle. Dear God, it's the Tennessee Titans. Isaiah Wilson did not work out this year for clearly off-the-field issues. Then they got rid of Dennis Kelly. They signed Kendall Lamb, a guy who's very close to my heart as a Cleveland guy. I really do like I do like Kendall Lamb. I don't think I would want to go into a season would Colts take Phillips or is O-line a higher priority. I think Phillips, like I've said before, the thing that teams are going to be worried about with Phillips is I actually think the Colts would be a team that would potentially trade back. If they didn't see the right O-lineman on the board and they had a team calling them to come up to maybe get a guy that they really liked, I think they would probably trade back and accrue some picks maybe in the mid-rounds of this year, just because that's the way Ballard rolls, right? Ballard, I think, you're going to hear about the Browns doing that this year. The funny thing is people have been saying, oh, like some of these teams, they don't need that much talent, so they could trade up. I think the Colts and the Browns and a few other teams are going to be eager on trading back to accrue picks. I don't think the Colts would spend 21 on Phillips because of the concussion issue, the risk of maybe not being able to have that player long term. The 5-year survival rate for a player in the NFL who has a concussion history is 1/3 the survival rate of a player without a concussion history. I think it's like 36% for a player without a concussion history to make it 5 years in the NFL. So it's 1/3 of all players make it through 5 years, which makes sense because it's not, it's the not for long league. But if you happen to have a concussion history, it's down to like 11%. So I think teams are really going to value that statistic. They're going to look at that and they're going to go, listen, this guy has a concussion history. He's had 3 concussions. He had he was medically retired from football when he played for UCLA. I think that's going to be a big issue for teams. I think teams are going to look at that and they're going to go, this guy might not play for us next year. He might get 1 concussion and he can't pass the protocol. And that's the thing. It's not whether he wants to play, and it's not whether the team wants him to play. Can he pass the concussion protocol when he gets a concussion? And I think that would take Phillips off the board for a lot of teams in round 1. Not every team, though. I think at least 2 teams, maybe 3, could value him as a round 1 player, depending on who's on the board at what time. Tennessee Titans are on the board. They have needs at corner. They redid their corner room. They got rid of Dory Jackson. They got rid of Malcolm Butler. They signed Janoris Jenkins. They have Christian Fulton on the roster. They went after edge rusher hard in free agency, right? They went ahead and got Bud Dupree. They have Justin Simmons. I think corner is a big deal for the Titans. I think right tackle is a big deal for the Titans. I don't see a tackle on the board that I would absolutely love for the Titans at this spot. Eichenberg, again, I think some teams are not going to value him as highly at 22. I think the Titans are probably going, you know what? We feel okay with Kendall Lamb. We saw him on the Browns a little bit last year. I thought it was weird they got rid of Dennis Kelly. That was the weirdest part. Like, he played solid for you as a swing tackle. They get rid of him. I think corner is very much in play here. If you look at, let's go to Caleb Farley still on the board. So is Ifeatu Melifonwu, Eric Stokes, Asante Samuel Jr. I think Eric Stokes is going to go first round. I don't know what team would take him in the first round, though. I don't think it's the Titans. I think if they're moving towards this more press man system, I think they might go Caleb Farley because, again, the Titans tend to be one of those teams that they don't worry as much about certain red flags. And now maybe they're learning from that. But you saw the same thing. They took Justin Simmons in the first round a couple of years ago after a torn ACL. I think if they feel comfortable with Caleb Farley, I think they would take Caleb Farley because, again, he's had 2 back procedures. The issue with Caleb Farley is I think he'll play this year. It's the long term for Caleb Farley that I think I'm being more worried about. But I think the value that the Titans are getting at 22 with Caleb Farley, they've had it work out for them in the past. They had Justin Simmons come in and play really well for them with injury risk. Isaiah Wilson wasn't an injury risk. He was just a head case off the field, unfortunately. And I don't want to say head case, but he had issues off the field. So 23 overall. We're now with the Jets. Is this how the board really works for the Jets? Oh, let's see. You got Azeez Ojulari. You got Barmore. I don't think they go T-tackle. They signed Sheldon Rankins. They got Quentin Williams. They signed Carl Lawson. I think they could still go edge rusher, right? They signed Vinny Curry. Azeez Ojulari's on the board. It's not like Sala is unfamiliar with this design of player. He didn't have Yannick Ngakoue, but he did have D Ford. So it depends on how his feelings are with D Ford. D Ford never really panned out for him. I think they would value highly another pass rusher on this team at 23. At 23, I could see them going Jason Owe, Joseph Osai, athletic, gifted guys that, can rush the passer, and I think are going to be maybe higher value on some teams' boards that think they can get the most out of a defensive lineman. If I'm Saleh, though, I like what I see out of Azeez Ojulari. You could pair him up with Carl Lawson, and now you're kind of creating issues on the edges of the pocket. You have Quentin Williams rushing up the middle. I think this is where I'm going to go. Azeez Ojulari to the New York Jets at 23. 24. Steelers at 24. I know there's been a lot of talk about them going Najee Harris, running back out of Alabama. I don't buy that they're going to go running back. I don't. They have never been the team to go ahead and just draft running backs in the first round. Not for a while, not never. But could you see Caleb Farley? Yes, I could. Okay, so Jay Land makes a good point. He says, can I see Caleb Farley falling out of the first round? I can. I could see Caleb Farley falling out of the first round. I could see Jalen Phillips falling out of the first round. It depends on how a team values that injury history. One of the issues with Caleb Farley's history is that he's had 2 back procedures. And the issue really comes down to, is his back going to last that whole contract? Which is why I feel like the Titans might be like, you know what? Even if he doesn't make it through the whole contract, we have Fulton. We're taking another shot on corner. If he plays 2-3 years for us and we can continue to draft and develop guys at other positions, this is the position where we're getting such a talent that if he turns into a solid player with our pass rush and we have Janoris Jenkins, I think that combination of players could be very good for the Titans. 24 overall, we're at the Pittsburgh Steelers. I could see them going Barmore, but their D-tackle, Javon Hargrave, by the way, was the name of the D-tackle from the Steelers who went to the Eagles. It finally hit me like a sack of bricks 30 seconds ago. But anyway, the Steelers go ahead, and they're looking at this board. I think if they see Alex Leatherwood on the board, they take him. There's a lot of talk about them potentially really liking Najee Harris. I don't think that's a bad thing. You can like a player, potentially want to take him first round, but then make the responsible move. I think the Steelers have always been a team that valued offensive line play. Alex Leatherwood's not the best tackle, but he's probably the best available tackle on the board for them. So taking Alex Leatherwood would bolster. They could play him at left tackle, or if DeCastro leaves, he retires next year, they could play him at guard and then draft a tackle later on. The right tackle, who they actually have a tackle who Filer left in free agency, so they lost Filer. They lost Andrew Villanueva. They also lost their center, Pouncey. So again, they are losing a lot of pieces to that offensive line. Chukwuma Okafor should not prevent you from drafting anybody because he did not play well at right tackle, and he was literally the turd on that offensive line no matter who else was playing. Filer was a really solid guy who could play either tackle or guard, and for some reason they felt like playing at left guard last year was important, and he got injured anyway, so it didn't really matter. Villanueva is gone for now, so at this point, I see them going offensive lineman. They go Alex Leatherwood. They need offensive linemen. You could wait to the second round, take a guy like Javonte Williams. You could take, you could trade up even if Najee Harris falls in the second round. You can find ways of getting value and, getting a player that, again, running back, there's 3 really good ones in this draft, and there's a bunch of other guys who are pretty solid. I think they wait. I just do. I can't see them going ahead and spending a valuable pick. 25 overall. We're finally at the Jacksonville Jaguars, right? The Jaguars. And here, I think they look at this board. They could take Christian Barmore, D-tackle out of Alabama. Like I said, I've been a big fan of his tape. There's been a lot of talk about them potentially going linebacker, maybe if Micah Parsons falls far enough. Again, Parsons is one of those three guys, could go anywhere. They could fall out of the first round or they can go top 10. I would not be shocked. 25 overall. So a lot of talk about them taking Trevon Merrick. I think that'd be a perfect fit for them. Again, you have a team that you have a new D coordinator there that I think is going to want to run a lot more man coverage. They did sign they signed Shaq Barrett. It was weird, right? They signed Shaq Griffin. Yes, they signed Shaq Griffin, corner formerly of the Seahawks. They have C.J. Henderson. I think they're going to want to play a lot more man coverage, even though I don't know if that's really what Shaq Griffin does really well, but I think they will try to utilize. Again, Shaq Griffin at least has some solid athleticism to him, so I think they will try to utilize Shaq Griffin. They have C.J. Henderson. They could look at corner here if one falls to them. There's not one of the valuable corners that I see here. Edge rusher, I think they could definitely look at edge rusher. There's no Azeez Ojulari. There's no Kwity Paye. Kwity Paye fell here. They would take him in a second. Because I don't think and Josh Allen was good for them. I don't think who's the edge that they took last year? I'm going to remember in 5 minutes, forget again. I don't think that the edge that they drafted last year, Barmore would be great here. Barmore would be great pretty much on any team. I know the Jaguars took a couple of D tackle. They signed a couple of D tackles for free agency. That doesn't prevent them from taking a D tackle in the draft. It takes D tackles, especially rookie D tackles, some time to develop in the NFL. I could totally see them going Barmore here. I kind of like that idea because, again, the D tackle aspect of it, like, again, they took two guys. So he's a start right away. They could rotate him in. I think that would work. They also have still trying to remember the guy who they took last year. Joseph Osai would be an interesting one. I don't know if, again, he's a little bit more of a higher upside pick. I don't know if we haven't really figured out Urban Meyer's style right now. Jamin Davis has been getting a lot of first-round talk. Zaven Collins used to get a lot of first-round talk. They could go linebacker. Again, it's hard to tell what Urban Meyer's going to value in this draft. Jason Owe, the athletic freak out of Penn State. Sorry for calling you a freak, buddy. But I think he could go here. He has that level of athleticism that's just insane. That, like, if you found a way to bottle it and turn it into something, I think that could totally work here. 25 overall. Oh, they could also go Rashad Bateman. They can get another outside receiver. They did sign Marvin Jones, but I don't think that prevents you from going after a guy. They could definitely go wide receiver here, especially if they could find a good outside receiver to pair up with it. Kayvon Chason. Thank you, Jalen. I appreciate that. Yes, Kayvon Chason, they drafted with their second first-round pick last year. Part of the Jalen Ramsey trade, which, again, this pick's also part of the Jalen Ramsey trade because the Rams don't care about first-round picks ever. So, 25 overall. I think Barmore's got to go. Yeah, I think you're right, man. I think you're going Barmore here. I could also see Owe. I could see Owe going 25 overall. Having that elite level of edge presence, I think would be interesting. I don't know, though. 26 overall, the Cleveland Browns, right? My team, my favorite team. What do I see them doing? Well, they just cut Sheldon Richardson. Barmore's gone. I also think they might re-sign Sheldon Richardson, bring him back at a cheaper deal if he wants to come back to Cleveland. They did just sign Jadeveon Clowney. They do have a need at corner. They would also be very interested in trading back. I think they're one of those 5 teams that would totally trade back no matter what at this stage of the draft. Gain some mid-round picks, maybe draft capital for next year. At 26 overall, I'm going to, at least for right now, keep it like they're not trading back, like they don't get a good enough offer to trade back. Teams that I could see trade up, though. Teams that I could see trade up into the first round while we're talking about this concept. I could see Jacksonville trading back up into the first round if they see a guy who they really like falling into the end of the first round. For instance, I could see them trading up for Trevon Moehrig, safety out of TCU. Probably one of the best safeties in this draft, especially if you're running a lot of cover 2, cover 4. I wouldn't want them to play him pure single high, but I could totally see Jacksonville doing this, trading up. I could see Miami trading up, too, back into the first round. Why? You know what? Let me show you why. Miami at 36. trading with the Browns at... Oh, I should probably switch this so you guys could see what's going on. 36, trading up to 26. What would they trade? I think they would trade San Francisco's third-round pick next year. Would that get it done? I don't know. I think that's far. I don't know. I don't know if they would trade 81. And they don't have any like mid-round picks from 81 to 56. That's what makes this hard. Let's see. Maybe do a pick swap as well. 81 for 89. No, doesn't seem like Cleveland wants to do that. That's the thing. I think it's a lot harder to get Miami to... You know what? Actually, 81's not a very valuable pick. Let's do that. So we'll swap it. We'll do 36 and 81 for 26. Declined. I wasn't expecting that. All right. This is why I've never done that on the mock draft before. Let's see. So I can see Jaguars doing something. Dang. All right. Browns have to pick. If they're picking, I think they take edge rusher, right? You got Joseph Osai, Jason Owe. I like Osai. I think Osai I would like better in the second round. I think he's more likely to fall the second round than Jason Owe because he has a little bit less lateral quickness. He is more of a Bud Dupree style rusher. I think he can get better at those aspects of it. I don't know if he's going to get better as far as his lateral agility, but as far as being able to work around the lack of lateral agility, he's also relatively new to the position, right? So we'll talk edge rusher here at 26 because I think this is actually the position I've scouted the most. Guys that are left on the board at edge rusher. Joseph Osai, I've already started talking a little bit about him. A little bit more of a straight line rusher. Yes, Jason Owe. Jayland, you're getting ahead of me, sir. Jason Owe. Well, maybe he is the pick here. Maybe not. Joseph Osai, straight line rusher. Again, kind of very much reminds me of Bud Dupree. The thing that I love about Joseph Osai is the motor, and he does have a lot of power to him. Like, again, I think if the Steelers were going to go edge rusher at 24 and they were replacing Bud Dupree, I think Osai would be the perfect guy to replace Bud Dupree. The only thing is, I think what the Steelers need more than an edge rusher, because I think actually Alex Highsmith played pretty well for them last year, playing across from TJ Watt. I think what they need is a corner or an offensive lineman. Again, just relitigating the whole Steelers pick all over again. 26 overall, though. A couple other guys on the board. Jalen Phillips, we talked about him. He's probably the best pass rusher in this draft class. Could the Browns take him? They could. I think that, like I mentioned before, the statistic about the risk of taking Jalen Phillips in the first round is that you might not get him to see any part of that contract. You might get him to see 1 year of that contract, maybe a year and a half. I have friends of mine who are very eager. They said, I don't care. I've heard the stats. I would still take him. I'm a little bit more risk averse on that issue. I think especially if you're pretending like this is your job, like for Andrew Berry, this is his job. If Jason Owe doesn't work out, I still think he works out. Like, 'cause I still think he's going to at least be able to do something well. He might not be the highest end guy. Jason Owe, though, the athleticism is insane. And to pair him up with Myles Garrett. And by the way, Jason Owe was not put in the best pass rushing situations. He was not lining up at wide 9. He was often lining up at like 5 tech, right over the tackle, often trying to play the run game. He was not always in the best situation to go ahead and rush the passer. Now, say you take Jason Owe and you put him at wide 9, at 3rd and long. This guy's going to be dominating whatever tackle he's going into. He's got legit speed to power. And in fact, I don't think he ever really utilized his lateral athleticism. Like, he dominated the 3-cone. And at the same time, I did not see, like, I thought Kwity Paye was way more agile than Jason Owe. Like, that functional agility, I have not seen on tape yet with Jason Owe. It's there somewhere. It's in the bottle. We got to find a way to break it out. So I feel a little bit more comfortable with Jason Owe at 26 than I would with Osai. 2 other guys to quickly mention. Ronnie Perkins, I don't think he goes in the first round. I just don't think the athleticism score showed up very well for him. I think teams will worry about that. He's also kind of relatively short. He's like a discount Azeez Ojulari, where he's had a lot of good games. Gregory Rousseau is the exact opposite. Dude's got all the length in the world. Basically looks like a basketball player playing defensive end. The issue was he was actually a lot better rushing from the inside. He was beating up a lot of guards and centers, and a lot of guards and centers who are currently working for the U.S. Postal Service. So, again, I think Gregory Rousseau, I would be more interested in him on day 2. Length and strength. If he blew up his pro day, or he showed a little bit better at the pro day, I feel a little bit more comfortable. We also never saw him play at 266, which is what he weighed in at, or 260, I think it was 267, 269 at the pro day. He never really played at that. He played at 245 when he was beating up those guards and centers. That's not to say that doesn't mean he couldn't be an amazing pass rusher at 260-something. In fact, I think the opposite. I think eventually he could develop into that. But his pass rush skills on the edge were not the greatest. He was better from the inside. I'm going Jason Owe at 26. That's just what this whole rant was about. It was a little bit of an edge rush conversation, which you will check out my edge rush ranks tomorrow. They will drop. 27 overall, Baltimore. What might Baltimore do? Now, I think Baltimore has a couple of options on the table. I think they would go potentially defense. They could go safety. Trevon Moehrig still on the board. I think Trevon Moehrig's the only guy who I really would take in the first round as far as safeties go. I like Richie Grant. He's a little bit older. Could definitely play single high free safety, but I just don't see him going in the first round. I think he's more of a top 50 guy for a lot of teams. Depends. The other guy who I could see maybe going in the top 50 as far as safeties go, Elijah Molden has a kind of a Buda Baker vibe to him. So does Javon Holland also. So I think both those guys could possibly go top 50, top 60. Richie Grant will probably be a top 50 guy. Trevon Moehrig, I think, is probably the safety if you're going Baltimore here. The other thing I could look at here with Baltimore, guard, Wyatt Davis is still on the board. Trey Smith, Ben Cleveland, still all really high. If Elijah Vera Tucker fell to the spot, they'd be running in the pick. Creed Humphrey's on the board. I think Creed Humphrey's going to go in the first round. I think he could easily go 24 to the Steelers. I think Baltimore, Skura's probably not there anymore, right? Like, is Skura still there? Skura went to the Miami Dolphins. Skura's got an issue where he checks the ball over the quarterback's head every once in a while. So same with the Ravens had that with 2 different centers last year. That was not good for the Ravens. It was good for other teams, including the Browns every once in a while. Happened quite a bit last year for the Browns, divisional opponents. That being said, Baltimore, I think Creed Humphrey. I think this is where he goes. I could see Landon Dickerson, but again, Landon Dickerson has the would Ravens go wide receiver in the first? I've heard that mentioned. I think it's possible. I think they had bigger issues on the interior of the offensive line, and I think they would maybe address wide receiver in the second round. If they were going to go wide receiver, I could see them going Rashad Bateman. I could see them going Terrence Marshall, go for one of the bigger wide receivers in the draft, guys who could play on the outside, that have shown tape on the outside. I don't hate that idea. Totally could go wide receiver. The only issue they're still a very run-first team, and their biggest issue was they lost Marshall Yanda. They lost the interior offensive lineman who was just such a big part of their team, was literally an all-pro guard. And when he left, the run game did take a little bit of a step back. Now, does that mean that they'll definitely go guard there? Maybe, maybe not. They could also go edge rusher, but their defense is built off of coverage, right? It's built off of coverage and blitzing. I don't think losing Matt Judon hurt them as much as if they had, say, lost Marlon Humphrey or Marcus Peters. So I think maybe they would go safety here because they kind of do need a safety, and I think they need a guard or interior offensive lineman. I think Creed Humphrey will at least help you a little bit there, and maybe they go guard the next round as well or a little bit later because I do think they need to address guard. I think they might even address tackle for the future of, when they don't have Orlando Brown because he's holding out. He's got one more year on his deal. He wants to be traded. So I know they've actually talked to Andrew Villanueva a little bit. Maybe he'll play right side for them, which I don't remember if he ever played right side for the Steelers, but I know he's played left side a lot for them. He would just be a good pickup if they end up trading Orlando Brown. So could I see them going wide receiver in the first? Yes. I think I'm a little less inclined to say they would. I know a lot of people say, you got to get Lamar Jackson wide receivers. Dude, he's played better with Mark Andrews and trying to throw, and not for nothing, Hollywood Brown's developed a bit. I think they would probably find other ways of utilizing their receiving core. than when things break. I think they prefer when things break down, some guy who can get open relatively quickly. So guys like Elijah Moore, maybe in the second round. Dwayne Eskridge, they might like as well. A guy who, on the outside, small but quick. I don't think they go for the big X receiver. I don't. I think those are names that get thrown around a lot. But also, Baltimore's not been good at drafting wide receivers. They did try to go after guys in free agency, and I think they got Sammy Watkins. That's not stopping you from drafting anybody either. But I just think Baltimore's offense really needs a better offensive lineman there. They need better interior O linemen. Like I said, when they lost Yonda, they did take a little bit of a step back. They lost Skura. I think, they go offensive line here. They could definitely go ahead and take a wide receiver. I don't think it's totally out of the question. It's probably one of their top 3 needs is interior offensive lineman, wide receiver, safety. Trying to think if I mentioned anybody else. But yeah, I think that's kind of where it would go. Interior O-line, maybe even tackle. Saints are on the board. It's not a quarterback left. They might be willing to trade up. I don't think so, though. I think they go Rashad Bateman. This is where the fall of the great wide receiver Bateman ends. Like I said, he's a guy who actually kind of very reminiscent of Michael Thomas. Could probably almost follow the second round and end up being a steal. Can line up in the slot and has done really well in the slot. I think he's actually a better outside guy than Michael Thomas was, even coming out. Very much again, run after catch guy a little bit. It's weird because his run after catch I don't think people really like, but when he's still able to utilize his body. He's not Michael Thomas-esque in that regard. But again, I think part of it was the health issues. You can line him up on the outside. Now you get a guy who you could pair up with Michael Thomas. You go ahead and maybe get another receiver later on. Other options they could go here. Zaven Collins. I don't know if they go Zaven Collins. I think they would go defensive line even. If you look at Joseph Osai, Gregory Rousseau, Jalen Phillips. If Barmore fell, Bateman or Marshall makes sense here if there's no QB. Yeah, I think if there's no QB, I think for the Saints going after a wide receiver to kind of take away a little bit of the attention on Michael Thomas. And again, they still have Alvin Kamara. They still have a really good offensive line. They no longer have Emmanuel Sanders. To get another guy in that wide receiving core to go ahead and take some pressure off of Michael Thomas. And again, now you have a guy like Jameis Winston who can throw a deep ball. So now you go ahead and maybe take a wide receiver here, maybe spend another day 2 pick or a day 3 pick on a wide receiver, maybe a deep threat. And now you have a good makings of a wide receiving core that really match what Jameis Winston can do really well. 29 overall. Another spot where wide receiver would make sense, right? They haven't taken a first-round wide receiver in forever. They're very much more of the second-round wide receiver team. They're going to take. I do think Green Bay takes a wide receiver in this draft. They might go 2 wide receivers in this draft because keep in mind they have a lot of wide receivers that are going to be free agents after this year. So I think Devontae Adams is coming up to the near end of his deal. Marquise Valdes-Scantling is coming up to the end of his rookie contract. There's just so many guys who are close to the end of their deals. Robert Tonyan, I think, was a restricted free agent this year, so I think he becomes a free agent next year. Because I think that means he's 3 years accrued at that point. So they could definitely go offensive weapon here. Let's see what's left on offense. I can see Terrence Marshall. Terrence Marshall, again, another guy who had better 2019 tape than 2020 tape. I could also see Terrence Marshall falling out of the first round because teams might be questioning his competitive spirit. He did play this year, but then he opted out right before the Alabama game. I don't know if I agree with that assessment. I'm just saying that I could see some teams looking at that and going so you came back, you didn't play well. He did not look good in the slot. He's definitely an outside receiver. He's one of the few outside receivers that I just don't think really works well in the slot at all. So I think some teams might be a little questionable about what he can do. They should give Rodgers another weapon. They did him dirty last year taking Love in the first. I agree. I think if I'm the Green Bay Packers, if I'm running the Packers, I give him a weapon. Looking here, before we talk about that, though, who do they have? Offensive lineman. They did lose Brian Bulaga last year. They kind of helped replace him a little bit. They lost Corey Linsley. If Creed Humphrey fell to this spot, I could see them taking Creed Humphrey. I can't see them taking Landon Dickerson here because, again, the injury concerns. So maybe in the second round they take him. Wyatt Davis in the second round would maybe be an interesting one, although they seem to find ways of getting guards that work for them. Kellen Mond. Yeah, I don't know why I clicked on quarterbacks. So I could totally see them going wide receiver here. Maybe to make it back up to, yeah, you know what? Let's do it like that. They're making it back up to our boy. Who would they maybe take, though? You know what's funny? I know there's a lot of talk about the wide receivers. First off, let's talk wide receivers here, right? By the way, I dropped a wide receiver episode last week with a friend of mine who is also a Cleveland Browns fan. So go check that out. We went over a lot of the wide receivers in this class. About an hour-long episode. You have to spend the whole time on it. But we went over quite a few guys who were in this draft class. Outside of the top tier, which I think Bateman's the end of the top tier for... by the way, my friend, last week, Marcus Harvey, outside of his top tier, Bateman was the end of that top tier. And actually, I don't think he was even the end. I think he was actually the top of the top tier for him. But if I'm a team here, I could also look at Elijah Moore, right? He's fast. Like, he's one of those guys where if you went ahead and checked out J.C. Horn film, like, he's one of those guys that popped. Elijah Moore's fast. I like him better than Kadarius Toney 10 times out of 10. Rondale Moore I like, but Rondale Moore I think I think teams are going to be a little bit more worried about the height. He's 5'7". I think he's going to fall out of the first round on that. I like Elijah Moore because I think Elijah Moore, you could use him a lot like you did with the 49ers did with Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. And again, I think that's a way of utilizing him where you're dealing a little bit with the projection element of it, but LaFleur has seen a little bit of how a guy like Elijah Moore, who's been used a little bit as a gadget, a little bit of a slot guy, but has deep speed and can be utilized in all different ways, and also a very good run after the catch kind of guy. I think this is an interesting way that I think this would be a good thing for Aaron Rodgers, be a good thing for the offense. You now get a guy who you don't have to worry about just Devontae Adams being the main guy and eventually potentially losing him. I maybe would have went other directions with this if I'm trying to pretend that I'm actually the Packers, but at this point, you know what? I think Elijah Moore's just too good for the Packers. And I think he would be the kind of guy that LaFleur would be like, you know what? We can get usage out of this. We can get a nice little fast, speedy, run-after-catch guy. And yeah, like Rondale Moore's going to get a lot of hype too, but hey, he's an inch and a half taller than Rondale Moore, and he plays big too. He plays through contact. I like Elijah Moore. So I think this is the perfect spot for him to go. 30 overall, Buffalo. Buffalo's like one of those sneaky teams where, like, yes, they have needs, but I don't think there's any particular need that throws them out of, like, what they need, right? There's not, like, if they don't address this, they're screwed. A lot of their needs, cornerback 2, edge rusher, but they haven't had a real edge rusher outside of Jerry Hughes since our buddy up in... Oh, why can't I remember your goddamn name? You look like Bill Burr, my friend. I'll remember it in 10 minutes later on. Anyway, since Brandon Beane's gotten there, they really haven't addressed edge rusher in the first round. They've taken D tackles, they've taken linebackers. They could take an edge rusher here. Look at the edge rushers. Could they be the team that takes a shot on Jalen Phillips or Gregory Rousseau, one of the Miami guys? Maybe I could see them doing that. At the same time, I think they look at that and they go, you know, if one of those guys doesn't work out, it's a big headache for them. They also have been a very good coverage team, so I don't think they're pushed to necessarily take a corner here. Safety, I think they are also a team that could take Trevon Moehrig, right? They could easily take him and go well with him. They could be a team that takes Wyatt Davis or one of the other guards that could fall into their lap. Again, another Elijah Vera Tucker spot. I don't think Vera Tucker gets out of the first round at all. In fact, I could see some teams trading up for Vera Tucker at the right spot. Trevon Moehrig, offensive line. I could see them going a receiver outside of Stephon Diggs. They really don't have anybody who has like a true talent on that roster for the long term. And I think guard, like I said, guard is definitely in play for them. I think they address guard maybe in the second or third round. Corner outside of Trey White, I mean. Guys who can maybe fit that role. I don't know how they would feel about Eric Stokes. He's got that high-level athleticism, straight-line speed. I think they could develop a defense that works around what he does really well. Asante Samuel Jr., you know what? I'm talking myself into it. I think Asante Samuel Jr., they have Levi Wallace. They constantly try to get rid of Levi Wallace. They didn't even tender him, and they still brought him back at a cheaper deal. He just likes being there. But I think Asante Samuel Jr., 30 to the Buffalo Bills, gives them another coverage guy, playing their defense. Edge rusher would also be on the board here. And the one edge rusher I could see, maybe Carlos Basham, a little bit older of a prospect. I don't think that they really worry too much about that. He's a different build than Jerry Hughes, so maybe if I was going to redo this, I'd maybe go Carlos Basham at 30 instead of Asante Samuel Jr. Both defenders, though, I think are good players. Asante is a solid pick here for the Bills. I agree. I think, my buddy Jaylan is totally right. I think Asante Samuel Jr. at 30 to the Bills be a perfect spot. I just also think another option here would maybe be going Carlos Basham, guy who could be an edge rusher that you also have there to pair up with Jerry Hughes, help deal with Brendan with Ed Oliver not turning into a true interior pass rusher, if you will. Just another guy to throw in that rotation. 31 overall, Kansas City Chiefs. I think this is the easiest one to go for because whatever tackle is still left on the board, pretty much go that route. And I'm going to go Liam Eichenberg. They could go Dylan Radins, and they've kind of gone towards that mold recently. You know what? Yeah, we'll go Dylan Radins over Eichenberg here. I like Eichenberg better. If it was personally me, I would have probably taken Eichenberg, but I'm taking into account that Kansas City just likes those athletes sometimes. You look at Eric Fisher. That's what Eric Fisher was. He was an athlete. Maybe they bring Eric Fisher back after the injuries have been resolved. Same thing with Mitchell Schwartz. They have Remmers there to play tackle. They have Lucas Niang, who they took in the 3rd round. But, again, you don't know what any of those guys are at this point. You know what Remmers is. I think if you attack it with, if you attack tackle right now, like they spent a lot of money on Joe Thuney. They should be getting the Duvernay back. Again, they have a good setup right now. But I still think, if you attack that offensive tackle with multiple pieces, then you should be fine. Right now, they have not done that. They would have Lucas Niang come back now with Dylan Radins to be part of that mix. Remmers. You now have 3 or 4 guys that you could go ahead and throw at the tackle position and see which one of these guys really works out for you. 32 overall. Tampa Bay Buccaneers is on the board. And I think they look at what's the position that really helped them out the best. First off, is it safety, right? Because outside of, I know last year they took Antoine Winfield Jr. He's played really well for him. Now you get another safety to go ahead and pair up with him. He's played really, you would now have a good duo safety. I could also see the Bucs trading back. Again, get a couple of extra picks, kind of get to play around with some stuff. Edge rusher, I could see them going Joseph Osai because Jason Pierre-Paul is getting a little bit older now, and you kind of need a guy to be in the wings in case, A, he goes down. You look at the long term. So you know what? Here, I could also see Zaven Collins. More because he kind of fits the inside linebacker role in a 3-4. He's got that size, that strength. Morig here, maybe. I could see Morig. To pair him up with Antoine Winfield Jr. would be an interesting one. I think that's maybe the one spot where, safety outside of Winfield Jr. would kind of be a good spot to take him. I also like Osai so much for this, though. Not even I like Osai a lot. I think this would maybe be the spot where you could take Osai and have him develop behind, JPP, and then you could trade up in the 2nd round, or you could find a safety in the 2nd round. Like I said before, maybe Richie Grant gets far enough into the 2nd, or who are the other safeties that are still on the board? So, actually, I have if they don't take a safety here, there will not be a safety in the 1st round, which I believe actually happened last year too. So it wouldn't shock me. I don't think the safety class is super great this year. There's no universal number. Yes, Trevon Morig is usually the top of a lot of people's boards, but I don't think what he necessarily does is, I think some teams feel like they can get away with not taking Morig. I think some teams will actually have Richie Grant and even have Elijah Molden as a safety higher, and Javon Holland hire, because what they can do in coverage, I think, is a little different. Like, again, the versatility aspect of it, the athleticism aspect of it. Now, granted, Trevon Moehrigg's athleticism score was not bad. I think he actually ran a 4.50, and there was also questions whether he had a back issue or not. So Moehrig would be an interesting one. He hasn't had a lot of experience playing true single high, which is not necessarily something it's not always what our buddy Todd Bowles does, but I think that versatility to be able to do that, I think he would like that a lot. Again, I could see the Buccaneers trading back. I could see them taking Barmore if he's there. I could see them taking a linebacker if they really like Jamin Davis. Again, knowing that your linebacking core outside of, like they have two really good linebackers. You know what? That's kind of, it would kind of be a weak spot to spend a lot on, even more so. Could they take offensive linemen? Eichenberg's still on the table. I still think maybe Eichenberg falls out of the first round at this point, and I think they feel okay with Smith. So they could go wide receiver, because keep in mind, Godwin, last year of his deal. So you just got tagged. So you have Evans, you have Godwin, you maybe have O.J. Howard coming back. They just extended Gronk to bring him back for a year. I could see them going maybe Diami Brown, Terrence Marshall Jr., get a guy who could line up on the outside, maybe be a solid player for you. But there's quite a few different receivers in this draft, and I don't think they're going to be pushed to take wide receiver here. So for the final pick for the first night of the draft, I'm going to go with, I think, Joseph Osai. And the reason is you can't have too many pass rushers. JPP is getting older. They're going to eventually replace him. They have Shaq Barrett on the other side, so he doesn't have to be the guy. They also blitz a lot. They might like the fact that he could drop into coverage a little bit, has familiarity with playing linebacker, because that's what he started as. So I'm going Joseph Osai at 32. It's not necessarily a guy I would love in the first round, but for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to have a guy who could rotate in with JPP, get a little bit, a guy who's still relatively new to the position. So, and that's the end of the first round. What I'm going to do is tomorrow, I'm going to do another midnight mock draft, but it's going to be the second round of this draft. So again, tune in tomorrow. I want to give a shout out to Jaylan, because you've been a big part of this the whole time, man. It's been fun talking to you, having you a part of this show. Like, follow, subscribe. If you want to follow the podcast, you can follow it at Draftvice on Twitter, at Draftvice_football on Instagram. You can follow me at BROJO. Death is in the end of life. Punch like a delicious drink you drink in the summer. And I will be doing a live Draftvice show, draft night, with a bunch of friends of mine. We will be doing it live from the spot in Nanuet, and it'll be a live show. You can come to Nanuet, New York, if you're in the area, because Cleveland's a very far trip from New Jersey. It's actually not that far from New Jersey. You could probably drive out there if you really want to. But I already booked the show, so come watch it. It will also be live on this channel, so that's why you subscribe. We'll be doing a live stream, live event of the draft, so please come enjoy, and thank you for tuning in. TTFN, ta-ta for now. Thank you, Jayland. Thank you for being a part of this draft. Please subscribe. But I would love to have you keep on coming back, and I love you, Jayland. You're my boy.
We're on to
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
about the past and about the future.